Welcome everyone to the Keeping Your Business Together in a Crisis live stream webinar series. This is part 18, Marketing in Turbulent Times. We are very fortunate to have Deborah Jason, author of Millionaire Marketing on a Shoestring Budget, as our presenter. Deborah is also part of the SBDC family as a consultant and presenter. She presents on topics like LinkedIn and other things as well. We are recording this session at 10 o'clock a.m. on Wednesday, August 26th. And everyone's on mute, but go ahead and put your questions in the chat. My co-moderator, Jamie Brandis, will be asking those questions to Deborah after she presents. This series is produced by the Boulder Small Business Development Center to support businesses in Boulder County as well as the rest of the state through our TechSource program. And we're one of 15 SBDCs in Colorado. So if you are dialing in from somewhere outside of Boulder County, please feel free to find the center that's closest to you by visiting coloradosbdc.org. Jamie will give you that URL again at the end of the presentation. And our center is actually hosted by the city of Boulder, and we're a part of this awesome group of local, state, and national strategic partners that can help you during these challenging times. All the SBDCs do very similar things. We do consulting that's confidential and at no cost. We do technical trainings, and we do connections to resources. And we're lucky to be part of such a strong group, particularly here in Boulder County. We greatly appreciate our relationships. There will be a link to this recording sent to you via email. So sit back, relax, and listen to Deborah and ask your questions. You can also go to bouldersbdc.com, and we have all 18 of our Keeping Your Business Together in a Crisis series there for your listening pleasure. We're going to move forward with this series. I think that Jamie and I were thinking after 18 we might put it to bed, but we have such big requests to keep it going that we're going to move into more relevant things for the fall and winter. A lot of marketing topics. Certainly when there's opportunities for additional funds or grants, we will have conversations about those on Wednesdays as well. But we're still going to be here for you, and so thanks for participating. And now I'm going to turn it over to Deborah. We're very excited to hear what she has to say. I think I can learn something myself. So Deborah, take it away.
Thank you, Susie, and thank you, Jamie, for serving as my hosts and moderators today. Hello, everyone. Deborah Jason here. I am going to hopefully share my screen with you. Let's just double check. Can you see that?
You can see it. You look good.
Okay, awesome. Good. So the first thing I want to do before we get started is just quickly assess, for those of you who are on the call right now, how strong are your current marketing efforts? On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being they're non-existent, and 5 being you are a marketing rock star. So if you just want to type in the chat on a scale of 1 to 5, Jamie will sort of be taking a peek just so we can get a feel for how many of you are actually actively marketing and feel like you're a rock star, or a 5 on the scale, or 1, you're going, my marketing is non-existent. So take a quick second to do that.
So it looks like we're getting 2.5, 4, 3. So I think we're kind of in the middle of it.
Across the board. Okay, well, now we have a little bit of a feel for those of you who are tuning in, because that's obviously what we're going to be talking about today. This presentation, Marketing in Turbulent Times, actually started many years ago after 9/11. At that time, I have a business as a copywriter, and so I write marketing materials. And many of my clients started to call me and say, Deborah, I'm not going to be marketing. I'm scared. I don't want to spend any money. I can't do this. I'm afraid I don't know what's going to happen. As many of you on this call may have felt the same. My philosophy at that time, and it's still true today, is that's not the time to cut back on your marketing. Okay, when times get tough, you need to stay visible. And so back then, people were laying people off. And now we fast forward to today, where people are getting laid off, but also businesses, and it may be one of your businesses, were required to shut down, to close their doors. And so they were thinking, oh my God, why should I be marketing? I can't even be in business. Now we're slowly making a comeback. Most people are, not everybody is there, and some are still closed. But the point that I want to make is that it's important to stay visible, okay? To keep that top of mind awareness, even when times get tough, because when times are tough, if you stay visible, people will remember you when things get better. So I want you to keep this in mind. It's not about thinking, oh my God, what do I need? I'm panicking right now. But think about your audience. Who are your customers? Who are your clients? Or even your prospects? And what do they need? What are their concerns? How can you address what they're going through and help them? Because you see, my philosophy is marketing is about building and nurturing relationships. Okay, it's about getting that know, like, and trust, what I call the KLT factor, strengthening that. Now, when it comes to this crazy time that we're living through right now, what I want to encourage you to do is to be what I call a compassionate marketer. What that means is think back to maybe the end of March. You may have received emails that say, Jamie, how are you doing? Things are just crazy now, aren't they? I hope you're doing okay. But by the way, buy my stuff. I have this thing I want to sell you. So buy this thing. I think you should do it today. Click on the button now and buy it. That's not what I mean by compassionate marketing. Compassionate marketing is about what can you do to be of service. And I love this quote from Martin Luther King because he said, everybody can serve, okay? You don't need a college degree to serve. You don't need to be a grammarian to serve. What you need is a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. So I want to say that again. You need a heart full of grace and a soul generated, a soul generated by love. I thought I was saying that wrong. So I want you to think about this. If you have a paper and a pen nearby, I want you to write down what's one thing that comes to mind, one way that you can serve your audience, and maybe you're already doing it, but maybe you're not, and there might be something in the back of your head that you've been thinking I should do. So just take a quick moment and write down what's one way that you can serve your audience. And then as we move forward, we'll see maybe what you just wrote down is something that we're going to talk about. Because I'm going to share with you 5 ways that you can be a compassionate marketer, stay visible, keep that top of mind awareness when times are tough. The first one is to present a webinar or a podcast. Here I am today presenting this virtual program to you. Some of what you see here are numerous topics that people are doing and speaking about, from cryptocurrency and finance and food to happiness and hospitality, narcissism, sports. I found one that's called Stuff to Blow Your Mind, travel. So think about your business. Think about your industry. What is it that you can share, that you can talk about on a podcast or on a webinar? And when I talk about talking about things, I want you to keep in mind how you can share value. This is not about going on a podcast and pitching a program. It's about sharing pointers, tips, strategies that will help your audience. These are some of the platforms that you can use. Today, we are on GoToWebinar. Many of you may have been on Zoom calls in the last 5 months. Zoom has a free version, but with Zoom, the free version only allows you to have 2 people where you can talk for as long as you like. But if you have 3 people or more, you're limited to 40 minutes. So if you want to have a larger group and a longer period of time for your podcast or your webinar, then you want to have something that's a paid version. There's Google Meet, there's Instant Teleseminar. So these are just some platforms that you can use. The question that comes up, though, is what do I talk about? So here are a few examples. If you are a financial advisor, one way you can share value with your audience is to talk about, well, how do you save money during a crisis like this? If you are in hospitality or tourism, talk about 5 ways that hotels can ensure your safety, because really that's a big topic these days. If people want to get out of town and they may not fly, they might drive, but they're thinking, where am I going to stay? If I don't have a camper or an RV, should I be in a hotel? Is that safe? So you can share tips like that. If you are an esthetician in the skincare industry, talk about how do you take care of your skin during a stressful time like the time that we're living through right now. So give some thought to that. Again, if you have a paper and pen, write down real quickly, what could you talk about? Now, many people say to me, Deborah, well, that's great, but I don't really want to start a podcast because it does take commitment. A podcast requires that you don't just put one up one day and walk away from it. So if you don't want to start your own podcast, you don't want to host your own program, think about being a guest, such as I am today with the Boulder SBDC. So you can be a guest on somebody's program, and radioguestlist.com is a resource where you can find opportunities. There's a free version and there's a paid version, but they will email you and say, perhaps the Boulder SBDC is looking for a speaker, but they'll tell you what the topic is. They will tell you how big the audience is approximately. Some people will say, well, I charge for you to be on my podcast or on my webinar. I don't pay to play. I'm not a proponent of that. I say you can be a guest and still get the exposure. And usually when they're saying you need to pay, it might be $50, and they're saying we'll give you greater exposure. But I don't encourage that. That's just my personal point of view. So think about topics that you might have to share. And if you want to be a guest on someone's podcast or you want to be a guest on a webinar, what I encourage you to do when you reach out to those people is not to just to say, here's who I am and here's my credentials, but to share benefits. If they have you as a guest on their program, what's the benefit to their listeners? What is it that you can share that's of value? So this makes it an easy way for you to build your credibility, to stay visible. Here's an example of several of the programs that I or my colleagues have been on. The one that you're looking at that says Instagram Pop and Power was a podcast, and Dr. Judith Browse, who was the host, said more than 40,000 people downloaded that episode. I got in front of 40,000 people. All I had to do was show up. The two on the bottom, one is my colleague Erin, who was a guest on a telesummit that happened. The other is my friend Greg Jameson, who was interviewed for a program. So keep that in mind. There are many opportunities for you to be a guest if you don't want to host your own program. So that's number one. Number two is you've done a podcast, you've done a webinar, now you can repurpose. Okay, repurpose is a popular word in the marketing world. Repurpose that content into an article. So you can start with your blog. If you have one, put it on your blog. If you don't have one, but you're on LinkedIn, let's say, you can post what's called a long form article on LinkedIn. It's like writing a blog, but it sits in your LinkedIn account, not on your website. Then contact a publication. So, for example, I wrote Marketing in Turbulent Times as an article right after 9/11. But around April, when we were going through the initial stages of COVID, I relaunched that article, updated it a little bit regarding Marketing in Turbulent Times today. I reached out to a local business publication. They eventually published it in their paper. But I also reached out to a trade association. I had spoken at their conference, and I said, I have this article, Marketing in Turbulent Times, and I will fine-tune it and customize it for your audience. So it was all about the spa industry. It was basically the same bones as the article, but I inserted examples that referred to their specific industry. So this, when you publish an article, whether it's on your blog or in an actual publication, conveys your knowledge about a subject. It gives you a broader reach, okay, and it enhances your reputation, not just in the professional community, but in your personal community. So think about that article and that idea. It could come straight from a podcast or a webinar you did, or it could be something new that you want to launch. When I talk about, well, reach out to a publication, people say to me, well, who do I reach out to? So for those of you who are in the Boulder, Denver area, there's the Daily Camera, reach out to them. There's BizWest, there's the Denver Business Journal. There are other publications. There are publications in your state, outside of your city, in your region, trade publications. I mentioned earlier there are podcasts for just about everything. Well, there are trade publications for just about everything. So don't be afraid to approach them and say, I have an idea for an article. And again, mention the benefits of the article to their readers, to their listeners, to their viewers, because that will give you greater exposure. So think about that. We have 1, podcast or a webinar, 2, write an article. So what would number 3 be? You might have guessed that this was going to be somewhere in this presentation, because social media is extremely popular. It's, every day there's some new social media platform. But this is the Social Media Marketing Industry Report and the top 5 reasons and the top benefits that people get from doing social media marketing. You can see number 1 is generating more exposure for your business, keeping top of mind, staying visible. But I also want you to know that number 5 is improving sales. And improving sales only reached the top 5 in the last year or 2. The reason I called that out is because I want you to keep in mind that social media, and actually most marketing tools, they're not about posting something and right away you are a millionaire. They're about building and nurturing relationships. Okay, so you don't put up something on social media and then expect the ka-ching button, and I do have one. If I had it right next to me, I would push it and you'd hear ka-ching. But it's about building and nurturing those relationships that can then lead to potential sales over time. The question that comes up when social media is discussed is, well, what do I share on social media? What am I supposed to be posting there? There are many things you could do. So if you are a guest on a podcast or a webinar, or even if you're hosting your own, you share links to that program. Some of you may have found out about today's program because the Boulder SBDC posted something on LinkedIn. You may have found out about another program because somebody posted it on Facebook or on Twitter. So you can do the same. You can share short tips from that article that you wrote. Or you can share a link to that article wherever it's posted. If it's posted on your blog, even if it's posted in a publication. So when the business publication posted my marketing article, I shared links to that on social media. If you are an author, it's a great way to promote your book, and not by going out and saying, buy my book, but I go out, I take a quote from my book, and I say, this comes from page 232, and then I link to my book. I still don't say buy my book, I just post a quote. Video clips are great on social media. Inspirational memes are great on social media. People really respond well to them. Testimonials. If you have been a guest on a program and somebody said something wonderful about you, ask them if you could share that publicly. Now, some people might say, sure, but don't use my name. If they don't want their name used, then ask them if you could just say, can I use your initials with the city and the state? So you can create something that you post on social that shares what someone else has said, somebody who praises your value. And the reason I have recipes on here is because during this time, I have a client who did in-home meal planning, or sometimes cooking for other people in their homes. Well, you can imagine during COVID, she could not go into their homes. So she started to share recipes on social media. So you can see there are quite a few things that you can share to build your visibility, to share your authority and your credibility on social media. This is Brian Fanzo, and Brian is a colleague of mine who also speaks about social media. And he said it doesn't replace a handshake, but when you do it right, it turns that first meeting from a handshake into a hug. Now, granted, right now we can't be hugging people, but you can send a virtual hug. Because remember, as I said, marketing is about building and nurturing relationships. And I'm guessing there are many of you who are listening who have probably had the experience of connecting with somebody on LinkedIn or connecting with somebody on Facebook. And then you get to meet them in person. And I'm guessing that first meeting was a hug. It was not a handshake, because you started to build a relationship and develop that know, like, and trust. One of the things I've been doing during COVID is painting with something called alcohol inks. And I started an Instagram account for that. Well, on Instagram, I started messaging with another artist. After several messages back and forth, I said, why don't we get on a phone call? Why don't we do a Zoom so that we can get to know each other better? So keep that in mind when you're doing social media marketing. You develop that relationship online, but you can take it offline to a phone call, and hopefully one of these days soon to an in-person meeting. Now, when it comes to social media, you may have guessed these are the top 5 platforms according to that industry report: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. What I want you to remember about social media marketing, whatever platform you use, is that it's about getting engaged. It's about getting involved. How else do you build and nurture relationships unless you connect with people? And I don't mean just connect and become a friend or a follower, but to like something they post, comment on something they post, share something they post. Or if you post something and somebody likes it, say thank you. If somebody comments on it, obviously the best thing to do is reply to their comment. Or if somebody shares something that you posted, thank them. So for example, the Boulder SBDC posted something on LinkedIn about today's program. I saw it on LinkedIn, I liked it, but I didn't just like it, I commented on it. This keeps you visible, keeps you top of mind, because people see that you're connecting with them and you're engaging with them. So when it comes to social media, what I want to cover briefly today is LinkedIn, because it's the world's largest network and it's professional. Okay, it focuses on professionals. Now, before someone meets you in person or virtually, you can bet if it's the first time they're meeting, they're searching you online. And so this puts you in a position to win or lose based on what they see on your LinkedIn profile and your activity there. Because more and more, especially today, people are engaging on LinkedIn. 73% of the people who are on LinkedIn, the members there, use it for networking. So this is an opportunity for you to demonstrate that you are an industry expert, that you can build your voice as a thought leader into your industry. And the third one here is one that I love, which is building deeper engagement with your professional community, and then influencing the behavior of others. Now, this statistic comes from LinkedIn, and it says if you have a complete, or what I call a robust and optimized profile, you are 40 times more likely to receive opportunities through LinkedIn. Keep that in mind, especially if you're on the call today and you're looking for a job. LinkedIn has gotten that reputation of being the place to go for jobs, but it's so much more for that. Okay, there's a way to build and nurture relationships. And so when it comes to robust profiles, I want to cover a few mistakes that are commonly made on LinkedIn. The good news is if you've made this mistake, you can fix it. And if you don't have a LinkedIn profile yet, then you can avoid these mistakes when you go to put up your profile. Mistake number 1 is this: not having a profile photo. So I have permission from this colleague of mine. This is what his LinkedIn profile looked like. Now, if you're in the dating world and you're on an app, you can guess that probably somebody would just swipe left if they saw this. And if someone goes to your LinkedIn profile, that's likely what they'll do if there's no photo there, because LinkedIn profiles with photos get 14 to 21 times more views. And when I talk about photos, what I want you to keep in mind is I'm talking about a professional photo. Doesn't necessarily mean a professional photographer has to take it. It can mean that you put on something nice, have a nice backdrop behind you, and ask someone to take your phone and take a photo. Okay, it's not about taking your wedding photo and cropping out your bride or cropping out the groom, which I do have a client who did that. We did correct it though. So mistake number 2 that people often make with LinkedIn is they don't optimize their profile for keyword phrases. So what you're seeing here is someone who used, underneath your name on LinkedIn, there's what we call the professional headline. This person used that they were the owner of the ABC Day Spa. I have whited it out for privacy purposes. Owner and founder are not keyword phrases unless you have a business where you're seeking angel investors or venture capital. So I want you to think about if someone was searching for you, but they didn't know your name and they didn't know your company, what would be the keyword phrase they would search to find somebody like you? So here's an example of Angela. I do one-on-one 2-hour consultations where we look at somebody's profile, and Angela's profile looked like this when we started. This was over a year ago when they had a different layout on LinkedIn. Angela, in her name field, said Angela Gaffney, keynote speaker, corporate wellness. Your name field is just supposed to be your name. It's not supposed to have keywords in it. It could have PhD or Master of Arts, things like that. But your keyword phrases go in your professional headline. Here, what you're looking at, the Daily Essentials Cookbook Collection Breakfast, that's Angela's professional headline. Now, that could have been a valuable headline for her if she was interested in having people find her for cookbooks or for recipes, but she wanted people to find her for keynote speaker. So I'm going to show you another slide to show you the after, what we did after we worked together. But I want you to notice something else, not keyword related, on this slide. Angela has in the background that blue, what we call constellation image. That is valuable real estate for you. So put an image in there, but don't just put an image, put contact information. And here's what we did with Angela. You can see now she has that background cover with her URL, her email, her phone number. It's not clickable, but you can see it's really easy for someone to find out how to contact her without clicking on that contact info button. So take advantage of that valuable real estate. The other thing we're looking at now is Angela's use of keywords. You can see now her name field is just her name. Her professional headline doesn't just say keynote speaker now. It says wellness keynote speaker. Be specific. So Angela didn't, if you search keynote speaker, you would find many, many, many results on LinkedIn. So now we focused on wellness, on nutrition, on stress management, and work-life balance. And you want to put these keywords in 6 strategic places throughout your profile. Here's another mistake. Many people go on LinkedIn and don't complete the About section. It used to be called the Summary section. This is Angela's About section. When I started working with her, she didn't have anything. But you can see now in her About section, one, she's using keyword phrases like wellness, stress management, work-life balance. The other thing I want you to keep in mind when you write your summary section, write it in first person, use keyword phrases, and this is about using keyword phrases where it's appropriate. It's not about stuffing them in here, okay? And then make it easy on the reader's eyes. So you can see Angela has short paragraphs. You can use bullet points, but don't use just bullet points. Make it conversational. The other thing that's very important is your About section is a little bit about you, but then how you help others. So in Angela's About section, you can see she talks about she's a wellness expert, but she helps busy professionals achieve health. In her next line, she talks a little bit about herself. She survived a health crisis that nearly took her life, but now she empowers others with wellness strategies. So keep that in mind when you're looking at your LinkedIn profile. The next mistake that people make is they don't customize their LinkedIn URL. So on the screen, what you're seeing is when you get a LinkedIn account, it says linkedin.com/pub/your name and a bunch of numbers. You want to take time and customize that. Because when you customize your LinkedIn URL, LinkedIn says if someone goes to search you in a browser and you have a customized URL, you will show up higher in the search results. It's also easier for you to share in an email or on a business card once you have that customized URL. So keep that in mind when you're looking at your LinkedIn profile. Another mistake people make is they don't get involved. Many people say, Deborah, I'm on LinkedIn, but nothing's happening. Well, it's not happening because remember what I said? Social media and LinkedIn is about building deeper engagement with your community. So if you put up a LinkedIn profile, one, if it's not robust and optimized, that doesn't encourage engagement. But the other thing is if you're on LinkedIn and you're not engaging with other people, then you're going to lose out. You're going to miss out. Remember I said you're in a position to win or lose. You want to connect, but you don't want to just have a connection. You want to like and comment and share and engage. So here's a LinkedIn checklist that you can get. It's a 10-point checklist. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile yet, this will help you to create your profile. If you do have a LinkedIn profile, this will serve as a reminder on things that you should go back and check and see if you've done on your checklist. So it's rightdirection.com/LinkedIn-10-point-checklist. And I'll put this slide up again later in the presentation. Real quickly, I want to share some results with you, results people have had and how they got those results. So one way is to connect with former colleagues. This gentleman was a financial advisor and he reached out to somebody he had worked with probably 10 years earlier. He didn't reach out to pitch that person. He reached out to reconnect and find out and catch up with that person. That person in return referred him to somebody. That somebody became a client with a $70 million account. So don't be afraid to reach out to former colleagues. Then connect with alumni. This is a great feature on LinkedIn. Now this person, what they did is they started to do a search for alumni of their university, but there were so many results that then they did a filter and they filtered it down based on a common interest, which was architecture. So now this person had one, something in common because of his alumni, two, something in common because of architecture. Keep in mind, as I mentioned earlier, he did not get 33 clients overnight. He got 33 clients by building and nurturing those relationships over time. And that led to substantial income for him. This person who was a contractor in Arizona, he shared valuable content, whether it was a post or an article, information about his industry, and his goal was to build his subcontractor database. And he was able to do that just by sharing valuable content on the platform. So real quickly, we've talked about 3 ways that you can market yourself in turbulent times. The first one is a podcast or webinar. The second one is an article, writing articles or repurposing content from your webinar into an article. And the third one is social media. Specifically, we've talked about LinkedIn. What else can you do? You probably have heard this a lot, but you can use video. Video is growing constantly, and one way, this is Sherry, who you can imagine did not have much business and still doesn't because she's an event planner. And the meeting and event industry is suffering right now. Thank goodness we have Zoom and GoToWebinar, but in-person events are suffering. And what she did was she used video to stay in touch with those people on a weekly basis, just so they would know that she was there to help. Okay? She wasn't pitching them about having an event because she couldn't. There were no place to have an event. She just wanted to say, how can I help? So that's one way to use video. But you can use video without fancy equipment. You don't need the big lights. You don't need the fancy microphones. All you need is your phone or an iPad. And you can do a Facebook Live, or you can do an Instagram Live, and you can share helpful tips. Here's what happened. My client is the International Spa Association. Almost right away, they started posting Facebook Lives, sharing helpful tips. What you see on this slide is they had one of their members, their name was Zeal, Zeal was hosting a Facebook Live with Venus Williams, and Venus was sharing stretches for tennis players. Now, I have seen people out on the tennis courts because you maintain 6 feet of distance, but that's an example of Facebook Live and how you can use it to stay in touch and be of value. Now, Abby is somebody I mentioned earlier who was sharing recipes because she was a meal planner. She went and cooked meals for people, or she went into their homes and gave them a menu of things that they could plan. But when she couldn't go into their homes anymore, she went into their homes via Facebook Live. She shared a recipe and she cooked it right there on Facebook Live. So you don't need fancy equipment. All you need is a phone or an iPad. Last but not least, when it comes to how can you market yourself in turbulent times, it's just reach out. Contact your existing clients, not with a sales pitch. So for example, in January and February, I was reaching out to meeting planners about speaking at a conference, at their conference. Well, come March, they didn't know whether they were going to even have a conference. So I felt really bad. It's like, I don't want to reach out to them and say, oh, by the way, are you going to hire me to speak? Because they didn't know if they were even going to have an event. What I did do is I reached out with a video in my email and I said, how are you doing? Is there anything I can do to help you at this time? That was it. Short and sweet. It was not a hardcore sales pitch. It wasn't like, are you going to hire me? What's happening with your event? Can I speak at your event? Will you still talk to me about hiring me? No, it was just, how are you doing during this crazy time? I imagine it's really stressful for you. If there is something I can do, please let me know how I can help. So I want you to think about that when you reach out to those existing clients. Going back to one of the very first slides I showed you today, how can you address their needs, their concerns? How can you help? So think about that. I don't want you to give up the ship. I want you to ask people what they want. What do they need during this time? I want you to be a compassionate marketer. And here's a review of how you can do that. You can present a webinar or a podcast, or be a guest on one instead of hosting your own. You can write an article and then post it on your blog, on your LinkedIn profile, or reach out to a publication about having them share it. And by the way, when I've shared my articles with some publications, some of them are print. They publish them in print and they publish them online. So that increases your visibility. Don't forget, whatever social network you're on, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram, engage on those networks, okay? And be consistent on those networks. Build and nurture those relationships and develop that KLT factor. Have fun. Invite your colleagues and your clients to a Zoom call. This is a group of my fellow speakers. We don't get on the Zoom call and talk about speaking. We get on and we have a game show night. Okay, it keeps us connected during turbulent times. Don't forget, pick up that phone or your iPad and do a Facebook or an Instagram live video. Here's an example of contacting your clients with a video email. This is my colleague, Shauna. She put this video in her email. So you open up her email and there's a video in there. Then there's one that I used. There's a tool called Cloud HQ. Cloud HQ, the free version, allows you to put a video in your email. So this one that you see on the screen, I was reaching out to Megan, who is an event planner. The video that she opened up did not say, oh, Megan, when are you going to hire me? The video just said, Megan, how are you doing? There's an event online being held by the global meeting industry, and they're trying to break a Guinness Book of world records for having the largest virtual event. And since you're a meeting planner, I thought you'd want to jump in on this call. See the link below. Now you'll also see I posted a link to my article about marketing in turbulent times. There was no sales pitch. It was just reaching out to say, hey, you might want to jump on this call. It's about the meetings industry. And of course, don't forget the telephone. And I don't mean pick up the telephone to text, pick up the phone to talk to people. That's what it was developed for. And I will say that I'm finding way more in the last 5 months that people are answering their phones and having those conversations. So we've covered 5 ways that you can market yourself in turbulent times. I want you to pick up a pen and paper. If you want, you can type in the chat. But what's one thing that you're going to do to create top of mind awareness? Just one thing. Maybe it's picking up the phone and calling a colleague or a client that you haven't talked to in a while. Maybe it's going and revisiting that LinkedIn profile and getting more engaged on LinkedIn. Maybe you're going to reach out. You have an idea for a podcast, but you don't want to host your own. So maybe you're going to reach out to someone and see if you can be a guest on their podcast. I want you to just write down what's one thing that you're going to do to market yourself in turbulent times. Now, just a quick reminder, if you want that 10-point LinkedIn checklist, it's at rightdirection.com/LinkedIn-10-point-checklist. Now, before we go to Q&A, I want to give you the opportunity to win a copy of my book. My book is called Millionaire Marketing on a Shoestring Budget. It highlights numerous ways that you can market yourself cost effectively. It's based on my experience of launching my business, which is now more than 30 years old. So to win a copy of the book, the first person to enter into the chat, I want you to enter three ways that you can market yourself in turbulent times. The first person to answer the 3 correct ways that were covered in today's program will win a copy of my book. So Jamie is going to be moderating and checking out what you're typing in there, and she's going to let me know who that winner is, and we'll get your name and address, and I will send you a copy of Millionaire Marketing on a Shoestring Budget.
Great. So it looks like Pamela is the winner here. So Pamela,
Awesome.
I will follow up with you afterwards, get your information. So thank you.
Great. Congratulations, Pamela. And Pamela, Jamie will get me your name, your full name and your mailing address, and I will send that your way. In the meantime, I want to thank you all for taking time to be here today. We are going to go to Q&A. So if you have some questions, hopefully I will know the answer, and I'll look forward to chatting with you. Jamie, you want to take it away?
I will. So thank you so much, Deborah, for putting this together. I think we got some really great tips. I know it's a challenging time for a lot of people trying to get out there and connect with customers and all that good stuff with marketing. So I think, this was helpful for people to hear about. So if you do have questions, please put them into the chat and we're happy to get to those. Let's see here. One question that we have is, if someone does do a webinar, how do they get someone to actually sign up for it?
Oh, wow. Well, that takes a lot of hard work and marketing, actually. So, for example, today's program, you signed up for it through the Boulder SBDC, but how did you find out about it? You may have found out about it because the Boulder SBDC sent you an email. You might have found out about it because you saw their LinkedIn post about the program on LinkedIn. I've tweeted things out. Maybe you saw a tweet of mine. So those are many of the ways that you can do it, is consider email marketing, social media marketing, word of mouth marketing. And what I mean by that is, for example, I'm a member of a group in Boulder and we have an email thread that goes out. And I posted in there that I'm going to be presenting this program. If you are in a Facebook group, some of the Facebook groups that I am in, they do once a week what they call a pitch Wednesday or a promo Friday. And I could post in there, please attend my program. And then I put the link in there so that they can go to the registration page. So hopefully that answers that question for you. But it does take, some time and effort to do it. You also need to make sure you plan accordingly. okay, so that you have enough time. Many people will at the last minute sign up, so don't always freak out that you're going, oh my God, nobody has signed up or 2 people have signed up. Lots of people will wait till the last minute, but you need to stay visible and keep reminding them of it, not in a way that's bothersome, but in a way that makes sense. So maybe you post something a month out, and then 2 weeks out, and then 1 week out, and then a couple of days before, so that it stays visible. I also want to mention real quick that I forgot to mention during the program. For those of you who are interested in, adding, let's say, that background banner image on your LinkedIn profile, there's a tool that you can use to do that. And it's called Canva, C-A-N-V-A, canva.com. So if you don't have a graphic designer, you can go into Canva. There is a template for your LinkedIn banner, and you can insert an image and then overlay text on it and then upload it to your LinkedIn profile. Any other questions popping up?
Yeah, so there's a couple different industries here that are asking if LinkedIn is still a relevant platform for them. So that would be restaurants and retail. So I guess, how would you use LinkedIn if you are?
That's a good question. Well, for restaurants and retail, let's start with restaurants. You could be posting things on LinkedIn for a couple of reasons. One, to stay visible with a potential audience, but 2, to stay in touch with your colleagues, with other restaurateurs, sharing valuable information. So the information you might share are 5 ways we're keeping our restaurant safe during this time. And maybe you share it as a long form article on LinkedIn, or maybe you share 1 tip at a time as a short post on LinkedIn, or maybe you find an article that's related and you share a link to that article, so that you're staying visible, and then then engage when people comment on it. Or if you find people aren't commenting but they're liking it, then go in and just thank them for liking it. And maybe when you thank them, you might ask a question as well, like, thanks for liking my post. Have you been to a restaurant lately? Or are you ordering takeout, or are you sitting outdoors? So then you start a conversation. Very important, that engagement. The other one was retail. So similar, for retail, you could also say, what are you doing to keep your customers safe during this time? But I've seen retailers share things like, fall is coming. Here's a fall, especially if your store is reopening and you're, let's say, an apparel store. Here's 5 ideas for what to wear this fall. Here are 3 pointers about what makes one mask better than another mask, because I do see retailers now that are carrying masks. So those are some ideas for restaurants and retailers. I will say for those 2 industries, a good platform specifically for restaurants, well, for both actually, because restaurants, you can share visuals of food. So you can consider Pinterest or Instagram. Instagram is fairly popular these days. It's second right after Facebook. Same with the retail industry. Show images of the products you have, but not just the products, people wearing the products. And if you don't have customers coming in the store, use your employees as your models. But there's lots of things that you can do to stay visible in those 2 industries specifically.
Great. So is there best practices for how frequently to post on social media? I know you focused on LinkedIn. It works well, especially with the other platforms too.
Yeah, they vary from platform to platform, and it depends, is usually the answer. On LinkedIn, I know one colleague who does a lot with Facebook, and he works with realtors, and he tells realtors to post on their Facebook business page, not their personal wall, 4 to 5 times a day. Now, to me, that's a lot. Now, you have tools where you can program those posts and you can schedule those posts, but depending on your platform and your audience, once a day on Facebook is probably enough. It could be, and I get this a lot, Deborah, I don't have time, I'm overwhelmed. So on Facebook in particular, you can schedule something, even if it's once a week. Same on Instagram, on any of the platforms, you can schedule your posts so that they come up. I would say at least once a week on whatever platform you're using. I used to use Twitter a lot. I'm not hardly ever using it once a week anymore. My focus has become more LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. In some cases, I might post every day meaning 5 days a week. So let me take that back. Not every day, but at least 5 days a week. But some days I don't, you know. So I tell people, don't pressure yourself. It's important to be consistent. So if you post something one day and then you wait a month, it's probably too long. So I would aim for once a week, at the least.
Okay, great. So it looks like that might be all the questions we have in the chat. If anyone has more, please feel free to enter them. I did want to say we are going to send out the slides after today's presentation, as well as a recording of today's presentation. And you can find all 18 that we've done in this series on our website, bouldersbdc.com. I know Deborah had some links here, so we have that 10-point checklist. So we will have that in the follow-up email as well. Just to reiterate what Susie said at the beginning, there are 15 SBDCs across the state. We all have different specialists that you can tap into and resources. So to find your local center, you can go to coloradosbdc.org, and that will help you find which of the 15 centers is going to be the best place for you to go. Susie, did you have anything additional to add to that?
No, thank you, Deborah. Thanks so much for presenting. And it was really great to listen to your thoughts. I will chime in one thing for those of you that are new to content. Deborah was mentioning consistency, which is incredibly important. And also just make sure that you actually want to read or see the content yourself. If it bores you, it will bore others more likely than not. And so the whole idea of not feeling pressured to post something that you know, might not be exciting.
No meeting.
Right, Deborah?
That's a great point. Yes, it's relevant. You know, it needs to be relevant, not just to you, but to your audience.
That's
because
right.
as Susie's saying, you know, if you look at it and go, well, you know, that's okay, then what do you think your audience is going to do? So you want something that draws them in, that has value to them, not just to you. Keep your audience in mind.
That's right. Wonderful. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah.
Thanks everyone for taking the time to be here today.
Bye.
Bye.